good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are uplifting positive stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
It's good to be back, and after a pretty busy weekend at the Duluth Wedding Show, having a booth there and stuff, it's great to meet people face to face, but now we get to kind of enter our
slow period,
decompress period, our recovery period. We were having a conversation the other night involving like how similar to like a workout, like we've been working hard, like during our busy wedding season and stuff, and then now it's like the recovery period, where we kind of can build back up our strength reserves for later in the year. And so now it's kind of nice to just breathe for a minute.
Yeah. And while we're in our slow season, it's nice to be able to figure out what we liked about the last year and figure out what could have been better and just kind of preparing ourselves to be better set up for success going into our next wedding season. So that kind of works with that analogy of building back up and stuff. So yeah.
And it works for non-wedding things too.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going through a really busy period or you just went through a really busy period with the holidays and stuff, a lot of retail I know gets really crazy. Take this time to kind of do some self-care and think about how you can build yourself back up after the busy season. So, yeah.
Not that this is what the topic of the episode is.
No, but going into January, the holidays are a busy time for people. Going to different people's houses, planning all the presents for people, or making a bunch of food for if you're hosting. There's just a lot with the holidays and stuff, and even with the New Year. So going into this January and February coming up, like just take that time for some self-care and give yourself that little boost of a break. So yeah. Awesome. Well, today's episode is all about making meaningful connections. So today it's all about talking about how we can both have ourselves get out of our comfort zones and reach out to people and make meaningful connections with others, as well as helping other people that may be a little more reserved or a little shy or whatever it may be to also come out of their shells and feel more comfortable. And so, we got some great stories lined up for today. Our first story for today comes from the subreddit Casual Conversation, and it is titled, "I cried last night after my sister told me that our friend's daughter talked about me all day because I played with her in the pool." Yeah.
That's sweet.
So here we go.
I don't even need to hear the story yet. That's already pretty sweet.
Yeah, just wholesome, just based off
nice.
the title. Here we go. "I've never held a child in my life. I'm always afraid that I'm going to do something wrong, like pick them up too fast or drop them. I'm not sure where this fear originated, but it's so severe I haven't ever played with kids, except when I was a kid, obviously. Also, my own childhood was rocky, so I've never really trusted myself to be able to handle something as important and precious as a child. 2 days ago, an old friend of mine and her husband brought their daughter to our apartment complex to swim. Their daughter is only 3 years old, and I kept my distance for a while. Then she wanted me to catch her as she jumped, very small height from a concrete step inside the pool. I couldn't say no, so I just made myself catch her. We spent hours in that pool, and she just kept trusting me, 100%. I even had her grab onto my shoulders, and I swam across the top of the water with her. It was endlessly fun, and I felt just full of this childhood joy I haven't felt in so long. Yesterday, my sister tells me that our friend's husband had sent her a message on Facebook. He told her that their daughter had had so much fun and couldn't stop talking about us, but especially me. Me? I'm tearing up just writing this. I just have this whole new outlook on life now for some reason, and I can't stop smiling about it."
That's nice.
Yeah, it's a super simple story, but it's just a sweet reminder that sometimes by pushing ourselves outside of our comfortability, we can have these awesome moments with others. And that, in this situation, it was with a little girl, but in general, like sometimes there may be things that we're like, oh, I'm not good at that. Whether it be like a sport event or karaoke with some friends or whatever it is, there can be those things that like, I'm just not good at that. In this case, it was being around kids and knowing how to handle being around kids. So sometimes we feel uncomfortable, but sometimes by pushing ourselves to go outside of that comfortability and just go for it, even if it doesn't go well, sometimes it can lead to really meaningful interactions with people. And in this case, it definitely was a very wholesome interaction for both her and the little girl, obviously, and made a big impact on her, enough that she posted about it on Reddit. So I just thought that was a good example of that.
And just being able to trust yourself as well in that situation, like obviously the little, it was a little girl, right?
Yep.
Was trusting them,
Right.
so then to trust yourself to be able to be good in that situation, and especially when you're worried that you couldn't do it,
Exactly. Jumping off into the pool and stuff.
And I'd say it's also nice to hear from a third party that someone had a good time with you. I know we're talking about a kid, so they're a little more honest and maybe the bar's a little lower in terms of like enjoyment. But it's just in general, you can apply that to other situations too, where, maybe you're not sure if they had a good time or not, or you're always doubting. We're very guilty of that. Even if someone says directly to us that they had a good time or they enjoy their company, we still like, I don't know. It's nice when you get it from a third party. I know recently, without getting into specifics, we had a group of friends, that there's a specific sect of our friend group. Like, I think we're close to them. I don't know. But then from two separate parties have made separate comments about how that original friends like have talked about us and like how we must be important to them or something, like more than we get directly from them. So to get that third party acknowledgement, it just really feels cool. Nice, and it's affirming too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Super, super sweet.
So on a side note with that is just don't be afraid to say nice things to people. Like to let them know
if you enjoyed their company, or if someone else enjoyed their company and it like there was a meaningful interaction, if you let them know, that can really kind of spur them to keep doing those interactions with other people and stuff too. So I know a lot of people have like social anxiety and stuff like that. So that's a good way to help people go out of their bubble a little bit. Awesome. All right. Our next story comes from the subreddit Ask Reddit. And the question was, what is the most wholesome thing you have seen? And someone responded with this. I was a part of a student panel to talk to incoming freshmen high school and welcome them to the school. After the general panel, we had a Q&A session where the students could ask questions they had about the presentation. I'm one to watch the quiet ones, being a quiet one myself, and saw one girl towards the front who seemed like she wanted to ask a question but kept getting intimidated when other students started talking. I offered to answer any questions people wanted to ask, but weren't comfortable to ask in front of the group. She immediately came up to me, really timidly. She asked, "Is it hard to make friends?" When I tell you all, my heart melted. I have been bullied all of high school for my weight and my stuttering disorder, so I definitely didn't want to lie to her. I said, it's not impossible by any means. Look for people in your classes that might like things you enjoy too. Talking is the best way to make new friends. I know it might be hard, trust me, I can't even talk properly and it was hard. She responds with a quiet, okay, and a smile. And I said, hey, worst comes to worst, me and my buddies hang out in room blank. If you need a friend or two to start out with, I'm here to help. She teared up and gave me a hug. I think this might well be the most wholesome thing I've ever done or said.
Man. Well, I know it's ultimately a wholesome, positive story, but man, is that kind of, yeah. I mean, their heart melted when it happened. My heart melted listening to it.
Right?
Like, is it hard to make friends? Like, oh, anyone who's ever struggled to make friends, which is, I would argue, probably a majority of people, how does that not just go, oh, like hit you right in the feels a little bit?
Right? I know.
Sometimes it is hard.
Yeah, it is. I remember I was in 7th grade and I switched middle schools, which was hard because I switched to a middle school where it was one of those school districts where most of the kids have been in classes together from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And so they already have established those friend groups and those cliques and all that kind of stuff. So coming in as a 7th grader, you're one of the only ones that doesn't know anybody when you get there. And so that was really scary for me. And I was really happily surprised at how many people were offering to me, like within my first class of the day, being like, hey, you can come sit with me at lunch, like that, all that kind of stuff. And that was just really eye-opening to me. I was like, wow, there's so many nice people in this school, So this is a good example of that too, that if you are in a position where you're in a school or a workforce that you know a bunch of people and stuff, being that person to extend that hand to somebody else that might not know anybody or might feel a little shy because they're new to the job or they're new to the school or whatever it is, and kind of just let them know that if they can't find anywhere to sit or anything at lunch or whatever it might be, that they're welcome to sit near you. That's just a cool thing to do.
That's what you and your friends were in high school. You were kind of like,
It's
I can't remember the
true.
term. You were the table where all the newcomers would always like, you'd be the introductory group for them until they find their real group.
Exactly. My friends and I used to joke.
You're a foster group.
That's what we were called. They called ourselves jokingly because it happened so many times where kids would come and they'd be new to the school in high school and they're like, I don't know where to sit. And we'd be like, yeah, you can sit with us. And so they'd be there for like a month or two until they'd get really involved in a sport or something and make friends with people in the sport. And then they start sitting with them. And it was just kind of the thing that we kind of joked about because we're the foster table.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
that
cool
didn't
to
hurt
have
you guys
it.
at all, did it? To make you sad at all that people were
No,
like, leaving
not
your
at
group?
all.
Or you
Because
completely
we got
understood?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, because people were. I mean, we had our own friend group that was there and stuff. And it's funny because like if that hadn't been the case, we would have run out of chairs
That's
at the
fair.
table. So
That's
it worked
fair.
out well because then people found the groups that they really clicked with.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, it was just nice that they had a group that they could sit with and stuff. So that was really cool. And yeah, I also think it's great when schools have those kind of panels or things like that to be able to answer questions to people coming into a high school or a middle school or whatever it is, just to be able to ask questions and stuff. I know that at our school we had a thing called Link Crew that was all about ushering in the new grade or whatever and helping them to feel comfortable with high school.
Most schools have some
They
form
do.
of that,
A lot of them
by
do.
different names.
Yeah. And that was something that I found really helpful when I was a freshman coming into high school, not knowing what to expect and stuff. So it's awesome that they have those. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, on to our next story, which also comes from the same thread. And this one says, well, I didn't see this event. I actually experienced it, so I hope it counts.
I'm going to say yes. Probably.
Toward the end of my senior year of high school, the teachers did this activity where everyone stuck some sort of white laminate paper or cardboard or something to their back. Then we all walked around and wrote on people's backs. Nice things, funny things, etc.
Ooh, that could go so south
It
in
could,
the wrong
But
environment.
it's wholesome here, so
That's good. That's good.
Everyone-
I like that we have that preface in this format. Is that okay? We know it's going to be positive
Yeah.
by the end, and or hopefully throughout. So
exactly.
that's good, because otherwise I'd be like, I don't know, scared that that's going to go horribly, horribly wrong if it was on
Right.
a more open-ended podcast. I don't know.
Exactly. So to continue with the story, everyone actually liked it and was kind of messing around. I wrote something silly like a running joke on the math teacher. Then she in turn wrote on mine. She was taking a while and I jokingly said something like, "Are you writing a novel?" She just sort of laughed and walked away when she was done. The time came to remove it and read what people had wrote. I saw the part where my math teacher wrote. I remember that moment while I was reading it. My silly mood instantly dropped and it was like the world got quiet around me. Just some background. At the time, I was struggling at home with my mother. She was a victim of child abuse, violent spousal abuse, and rape. As you can imagine, not stable. Our relationship was dysfunctional. I was reaching a point where all the emotional stuff she dumped on me was taking a toll. I was depressed, started cutting myself, and felt worthless. It was like she didn't like me or want me. Plus, my dad disowned me straight up over the phone when I was 13, so I really didn't feel wanted by anyone. So I read what my math teacher, my favorite teacher, wrote. It was about how great a person I am and to always remain sweet and kind. She then said, if Max could turn out like you, I'd be the happiest mother in the world. Max was her 2-year-old son. I'm some black Hispanic nobody living in Washington Heights, and she's this educated, attractive white lady with a blonde kid. That hit my chest so hard. Like it made me think maybe I am a son somebody would actually want. I just stared at her across the room while she was doing something for someone else. I never said anything to her, but I saved that strip of paper in my wallet for a long time. I remember the day I lost it, I was devastated. That woman probably saved my life with that small gesture. One of those little things that lightened up my life just enough to make it a little further. It made me feel wanted, and I would pathetically fantasize about being her son. 18 years later, and I'm finally in a good place, and I will never forget Mrs. Mueller. Edit. Whoa, I did not expect such a response. And a gold, my first ever. Thanks, stranger, and thank you for all the kind words. Just so you all know, I did reach out to her after writing the comment, and I found her online. Figured everyone deserves to know. Yeah.
So I want to retract or edit my own comment from earlier, but like, oh, we know it's going to be positive and great. Well, that doesn't mean that we don't still veer into the heavier material sometimes, which,
Right.
gives way to, positive outcomes and overcoming those negative feelings and such. Because, oof, that's
Right.
A lot of oofs in this episode. Our Minnesota's coming out with our oofdas.
Oofda.
Oofda.
Yeah. But the thing that really struck me with this story was that you don't know what is going on with somebody's personal life.
No.
And a lot of times people try to mask it. And in this case, this kid was goofing around and being silly and not really taking this activity super seriously. It sounds like they were just kind of writing jokes on people's backs and stuff. And so then for this teacher to write that and it like hit them that hard of what was said, I don't know. I just think it's another good example of you don't know what's going on with somebody behind the scenes. So always be kind.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an opportunity like this, but even if you just have an opportunity in general outside of an activity that's like you have to say something nice, say something nice to somebody. If you notice something positive about them, like this teacher did about this student, tell them, because you don't understand how much that could affect them and how much that could, impact their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember there was a activity kind of like this. I went to like a leadership, we both did. We went to a leadership forum at different years, but.
The Scott Anderson one?
Yeah.
Scott Anderson Leadership Forum?
Yep, with a bunch of high schoolers in the area. And there was an activity where we had to go around the room in a circle, and one person would sit in the middle, and everybody had to say something nice about the person in the middle. That was the activity. And it was trying to kind of teach that lesson of being forthright with positive things, not shying away from complimenting somebody. And that's like a good sign of leadership, is to be able to tell people good attributes you notice in them, because that'll help them to keep doing those positive things, right?
Mm-hmm. But like really deep stuff, not just like
not just like I like
nice,
your shirt,
you know,
or,
which unfortunately did happen a couple of times because it's hard. They're big enough groups where it's kind of hard to get to know everybody super well. But
right.
You try.
Yeah, and it's only a week-long thing too.
Yeah, for a few hours each day.
Yeah.
It's not like it's the entire day.
Right. And so through this forum, I would try to talk a bunch with people and stuff like that, but I'm also just I'm not a super talkative person in general. I am with people that I'm really, really close with.
Or on a podcast.
Yeah, we're on a podcast.
But even then, you're sharing a lot of stories from other people.
Right.
So, is there, yeah.
Exactly. And so a lot of people kept prefacing the compliments, like when it got to me sitting in the middle, and it was like, oh God, I don't like the attention being on myself for this. So I felt kind of like nervous for that in general. So anyways, I'm sitting in the middle, and they're like, most of them are like, well, you don't talk a lot. Well, you're kind of quiet. I'm like, I thought this was supposed to be compliments. This is just like, I don't know. I was feeling kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's unfortunate. People think I'm just quiet and stuff. And then it got to one of the group leaders, and the adults, not a high schooler, an adult that was help running this group. And he said something along the lines of, you know, people keep saying that you're quiet and stuff, but I don't think that's necessarily true. He's like, you talk. You're just somebody that really processes everything you say before you say it. And it's very obvious that you've thought through everything you say, because everything you say is very meaningful. Like, you can tell you put thought into what you're saying. You're not just saying the first thing that comes to your head. And I would imagine that you probably enjoy or would be very good at writing, because that's like a good trait for a good writer and stuff like that. And at the time, I was definitely into writing books and stuff like that. So that it was just something that really, really saved my day, because I was feeling really low when everybody was saying like, oh, you're just quiet, you're nice, you're smiley, you're quiet, you know? And then for him to say that, and I was like, that feels like really nice, because I do try to like think through everything I say before I say it. I've always kind of been like that. And so for someone to say that, it just made me feel better when I was already feeling like, oh, well, maybe I'm just awkward. You know, it just little things like that. When you notice something like that, and if you tell the person, you have no idea how much of an impact that could make on them, because it really definitely made an impact on me. And it helped me to reframe my mind from I'm just quiet to I'm just really thinking through everything I say. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're definitely not just quiet, because you definitely open up a lot more when you're more comfortable with groups. You and I talk all the time.
Yeah.
You're definitely not quiet around me.
Right.
And then hopefully I'm not quiet with you either.
No, I think it's just a lot of people are probably like that. They're more introverted, you know?
I'm not, unfortunately. I suffer from foot and mouth syndrome.
Hey, but that's not always a bad thing either. There's pros and cons to both, right?
I've been told the exact opposite comment growing up of that. I speak faster than I'm thinking sometimes, and sometimes it comes with
but sometimes that can be really helpful to help other people to speak up too, because I know for me it's easier when I'm in a group when somebody else is very extroverted and talks a lot. It helps to pull me to be more extroverted.
Gotta have the right balance.
Right.
I've definitely had moments where I didn't have the right balance and I was over talking, where it kind of dominates the conversation. So it's all about balance.
Exactly. Yeah, making meaningful connections, I think, is sometimes about finding that balance, and also about helping other people to feel comfortable in finding that balance too. So, yeah.
Bring it back to the original story. Say nice things. Write nice things. Take the opportunity.
Yeah, take the opportunity. Which
Meaningful,
is a past
nice
episode,
things.
but yes, it all connects. All right, our last Reddit story for today comes from the Reddit thread, "What's the most wholesome experience you've had?" from Ask Reddit. And this one says, "I got to a public transit bus station a few minutes too late one night and missed my last bus home. I was standing there at 1 a.m. in the morning wondering what the heck I was going to do when a guy around my age came up and asked me if it was indeed the last bus. It was. I told him I had a bit of money, not enough to get a cab to where we were both headed, but at least halfway there. I said he was welcome to come with me, and he did. Most of the way home was down a very long, very dark, very deserted road. And after explaining to the cabbie that I only had X amount of money, I was half hoping he would have a heart and at least drive us to the end of it. He did not, and let us out in the middle of nowhere when my money ran out, and turned around to head the other way.
That's not the wholesome part?
No.
You had an opportunity, driver. You had an opportunity.
But that's okay.
But you cannot expect
That's also
those
his
things.
job.
You also can't expect it.
Exactly.
But
Here comes the wholesome part.
All right.
Me and this guy, who was a recent immigrant from Africa, walked down the rest of the road for over an hour, basically looking at the stars in the complete darkness and talking about the meaning of life. It was one of the best conversations I've ever had, maybe my favorite one ever. When we got to the end of the road, he was going one way and I was going another, and we shook hands and wished each other a good life. We knew we'd probably never ever see each other again. Heck, it was so dark, I didn't even really know what he looked like. This was before cell phones and email, so I guess we could have exchanged numbers and become lifelong friends. But for whatever reason, we didn't. We came to some pretty revelatory conclusions on the road that night. I often wonder if he saw me as an angel in his life who helped him work out some things. I don't believe in angels or anything like that myself, but I still can't help but wonder if he might have been one in mine. Anyway, I hope he's had a good life. Yeah. It's, again, like, it sounds like a simple story, but I think it's pretty cool that these two complete strangers just decided to have these deep conversations instead of just awkwardly walking in silence on this dark road together, right? They took that time to actually just get to know each other and, like, have these deep conversations. And yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like people don't dive that deep in deep conversations and very regularly. I feel like most of us feel too like, oh, I don't know if I should go about deep talk with other people and stuff. I think I should just kind of scrape the surface when I have conversations and stuff, because I don't want to get too deep or too controversial or whatever it may be. But sometimes I think by having those deep conversations, it can really deepen that connection with somebody. More than if you just talk about, oh, how was that TV show you liked, or how was your day at work, or how's work going? You know, if you go a little deeper than that, sometimes, again, yeah, you can find out way more about a person. And even though it might seem more uncomfortable to do that, to ask those deeper questions and stuff, I think if you have an open mind going into it and you're asking from a good place, I think you can have really cool conversations.
You're also more likely to actually find common ground, because that's where we have common ground versus, you know, interests like that are relatively superficial, like shows you like or games or activities, what have you. They're kind of shots in the dark a little bit.
Right.
Not just because they're on a dark walkway there. But,
right.
We don't share all those things in common. You and I even know there's things that you like that I don't like and things that I like that you don't like. So there's not, you could just be missing things there. Just going down a list like, well, are you a fan of this? No. Okay. Are you a fan of this? Okay. No. Fan of this, you know, versus if you're talking about like the meaning of life or things like that. Those are just kind of, there's some universal topics and feelings out there that I think as humans we can all kind of connect with, you know, and maybe because it is like, you know, passing strangers and stuff, like maybe it's like, okay, whatever, what I have to lose here in this conversation, you know, we're walking down the dark road.
I'm never going to see you again, probably. Exactly. But even for people that you are going to see again, I think that there is something we said that, and it kind of goes back to our episode of overcoming differences a little bit too, about having an open mind to have those deeper conversations to make those meaningful connections even more meaningful. I know for me, when I was in high school, there was a girl that I was friends with that was in a lot of my classes and stuff. And so we would have a lot of conversations about things that were pretty deep, like religion was one that kept coming up because she had different religious beliefs than I did. And some of my favorite conversations that we had in those classes were talking about that because it was just so interesting to hear her perspectives and then I'd share my perspectives. And yeah, it was just such an interesting conversation. And I think back on that a lot very fondly. And when people are like, oh, well, I don't agree with this religious belief or anything like that, I feel like I actually can contribute to that conversation then too and be like, well, this is what they believe and why, because I had that conversation with her in high school. And we can have more of a more interesting conversation because of it. And so I think with those deeper topics, not necessarily shying away from them because they can deepen your relationship, I think it's a good thing to do. So yeah, good example of that. And like you said, especially if it's a stranger, it's like, well, what do I got to lose? You know, like if they think I'm a wacko for my views, I ain't gonna ever see them again. You know? So not being afraid to talk with strangers too, because you could always make a new friend. Maybe they could have exchanged numbers and been friends to this day. You never know. I mean, for example, we've talked about this before. On the Disney cruises, like I said, I'm introverted. We got sat at a table of 6 people that we didn't know. And I was like...
6 including us.
Oh, yeah, I should have prefaced that.
That's
so
fine.
4 other people.
4 other people, 6 total.
Yeah, and I remember just being like, oh God, like, I don't know if I should be making small talk. Should we not talk with them? Because I don't know what we should be doing. And by the end of the week... we were all laughing and having great conversations. We'd all come from completely different parts of the United States. So very different perspectives on
Minnesota,
life.
One group was from Florida. I think the other 2 were from Connecticut or something like that, you know? So we were kind of, well, I guess eastern side, but, you know, north, south, and kind of middle of the 2 a little bit. Yeah.
And by having those conversations with them, I mean, we didn't end up exchanging numbers at the end of the week, but I mean, we'll probably never see them again. But it was such an interesting week of making these connections with people and learning about what it was like to live in Florida and the things that they deal with on the daily. And they were like, what do you do with the snow? I know you guys get a bunch of snow. How do you get yourselves out to work? Like stuff like that. Do you just shovel? And we're like, we snowblow. They're like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's weird. It's funny describing what we do with the large amounts of snow we get and snow blowing.
Right. People are like, how do you live there?
Yeah. But they have hurricanes. So
right. And they were talking about how they prepare for hurricanes and stuff down there. It was just really interesting to get different perspectives and make that connection with people that we normally would never have made that connection with. And so, yeah, being open to having those conversations with people, with strangers and stuff too. And we've talked about that a lot on this podcast, but it's just, I think it's really important. So yeah, on to our news article for today. Our news article comes from today.com, and it is titled, LA restaurateur Marissa Hermer launches food delivery service to feed families displaced by wildfires. So this is coming from all the California wildfires that are happening.
Palisade, or?
Yep, exactly. So an example, and I think it's really important to share this now while it's in the midst of this stuff going on and people are actively trying to recover from this and are currently displaced from their homes and all these things. I think it's really important to share the stories of positive things that are happening in the midst of it, people that are going out of their way to help, because there are so many stories right now of people that are standing up to do things to help out. Our hearts go out to everybody that's affected by this right now, because I've read a lot of stories of the very, 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 very negative things that are happening right now to people, and I can't even imagine.
And I think a lot of people have seen the images and stuff
out there. It's terrifying. The sky with the red coloring, even from a distance, from the fires, it's terrifying. The people that are actively trying to keep the stuff away from their home. I know, like, Dick Van Dyke was like, someone had to like save him, like, because he was trying to use a fire hose to like get rid of the fire on his property, and he exhausted himself trying to get the fire hose unkinked and stuff, and so someone had to literally like help drag him off his yard to get him out of the line of the fire that was coming over the hill. So very, very scary stuff is happening with that. So again, but I think it's really important that despite all the negative stuff, that we also point out the positive stuff of people that are taking this negative stuff that's happening and trying to make a difference despite it. So this is a good example of that. So this one, to quote the article right off the bat, Marissa Hermer says, "If you don't know what you're going to do, lean into the things that you do know, and I know how to cook dinner." So I'm just going to go through the article and quote the story that she's saying in their interview, because I think it's really interesting. So she says, my ex-husband and I both had to walk in, carry all of the belongings that we could grab on our backs and our fronts and piled up. So they were trying to escape from the fires themselves. I wore every piece of jewelry that I owned and carried tons of bags and walked out about a mile. You scan your house and you think, okay, what am I going to take? You know, there's no planning for this. We didn't have a go bag. As I was driving the kids and the dogs down to a hotel, I thought about what all parents think about at around 6 o'clock at night, which is, what's for dinner? And then I thought there are a lot of people in Los Angeles who are wondering what's for dinner. And when you don't have a kitchen, that's an even bigger challenge. When you don't know if your house is standing and if you don't know where your kids are going to go to school or you don't know what you're going to do, lean into the things that you do know. And I know how to cook dinner. So I thought, okay, let's cook dinner for a lot of people because we can. And we have a team who can do it. She says that she's raised over $50,000 from people.
Oh, wow.
Which is going to provide meals for displaced families and frontline workers. Their restaurant is open Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And apparently she also had done this during the COVID pandemic. And so they saw that helped a lot of people. And so she decided to start this back up again with this situation. People can donate to this program she has by texting dinner to 707070. Apparently, according to the article. And then on her Instagram, she was saying that displaced families in LA who need food can comment family for a free meal. Folks can nominate a displaced family who needs food by commenting nominate family and tagging the individual. And drivers who can pick up food from the restaurants and deliver it to families can comment driver. So there's different ways to kind of get that food out there to people that need it. Another quote that she said was, what we learned in the pandemic is community is a lot more than your post office and your local coffee shop and the bricks and mortar of your community. This is what community is. It's togetherness and connecting. I am alive. I'm surviving. It comes in waves. Last night, I didn't know what to do. I was sobbing. I had no answers. The devastation is enormous and not singular to me. It is shared by the masses and probably the world at this point. And then sometimes I think, oh my gosh, we can do this. There's hope. We can band together. We are a community. Let's fix this. Let's help.
Man.
Yeah. I thought that was a powerful quote at the end there.
Yeah. Well, the whole story is powerful, especially considering that, you know, they're also affected by the wildfires. They're not outsiders coming in like that are not affected and like, I can go help and going help, which is also great as well. But to also step up while you were also like in
experiencing
need.
It yourself. Right.
That they very well might not have their home to go back to now. We don't know. They don't know.
Exactly. And the fact that also that she's been able to raise $50,000 from people that have donated. It's cool to see that people are ready to help and ready to donate to help people be able to be fed for this and stuff. And there's a cool idea behind that of having that option to text in and say, I need help, or this family needs help, or whatever it is, to be able to get that help to them, you know, because some people might not know that this is even a thing. So that's really cool that she came up with that idea to have that, because it gets the help out there more easily to people.
And I feel like people forget about, you know, the need for food in these situations.
Right.
I feel like we talk so much about the fires and the devastation, which obviously we should, but you know, when you're displaced, you got to figure out food.
Exactly.
You can't just live off of restaurants or whatever, you know, and also where are you going to go for the restaurants? Because everybody's in the same boat.
A lot of things are probably closed down with what's going on. So
that's going to get expensive too, to have to keep going out for everything, and maybe getting hotel rooms and stuff, and that's expensive. Like, and it's for an unknown period of time, maybe for a very extensive period of time.
Exactly.
And so food is one of those things I feel like gets forgotten about, because, you know, it's not as immediate as, say, the
shelter,
where you're going to be sleeping that night, and such. But those things add up, and you do need to eat, and that's important, especially for a family.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, one more story with the Palisade fires and stuff that I thought was really like, whoa. So this one comes from Reuters. And it is titled, Animal Rescuers Care for LA Fire Evacuees, Dogs, Donkeys, Horses. So apparently 400 animals have arrived at the Pasadena facility since the Southern California wildfires began last Tuesday, according to this article, and this was posted on January 11th. The Humane Society was accepting animals as a temporary shelter for families that were evacuating, since they didn't know if they were going to be staying in a hotel or where they would be staying, obviously. So they were temporarily housing some of the animals. And then, unfortunately, a lot of people found that their house had burnt down or that things were damaged and stuff, and they couldn't actually have their animals come back to their house right away. And so now they're like holding a lot of them long term until they can find places, which is cool that they're doing that. But now, according to the article, to quote the article, the organization has entered a new phase of the disaster response: search, rescue, and recovery. So Pasadena Humane is prioritizing calls to help live animals in the burn zones, including 8 injured peacocks. So they're helping out like the wildlife as well that are in the midst of the fires. Quote the article here: one man in Altadena contacted the Humane Society for help getting water to cows, sheep, and a bull that he had been unable to reach because the fire destroyed a bridge. We've been strategizing how we can get a significant amount of water over this ravine and up this hill so that these animals don't perish from dehydration. Yeah, pretty crazy. So they're also helping the wildlife, which is really, really cool. And then throughout the crisis, they said that the community had provided enough donations to fill 5 U-Haul trucks for these animals.
Wow.
So people, again, coming together to help out, which is really, really cool.
For animals that can't really necessarily help themselves or are more limited in how they can help themselves.
So we were just talking about the Pasadena Humane Society. Well, the Los Angeles Equestrian Center also took in about 400 animals that were mostly horses, but also some donkeys, because apparently a lot of the people in that area are very into owning horses, and so they didn't have anywhere to bring them. So they've been taking them in and taking care of them in the meantime. To quote the article again, on Saturday, dozens of volunteers helped walk and feed horses and clean the grounds. The center was packed with donations of apples and carrots for the animals and pizza and sandwiches for humans. There is so much help and so much goodwill being shared, says somebody that was, her horse was housed there while she was displaced. So yeah, I just thought that was a really, really cool story too. And something that, you know, sometimes we don't always think about, of people that don't know what to do with their pets in the meantime if they're currently displaced unexpectedly, of where do I bring them? Not most hotels don't accept pets, especially if they're all filling up in the surrounding areas outside of horses. They're horses, they're donkeys. They're things that you don't really necessarily come to mind right away when you're thinking about a crisis like this. Like you said, a lot of people's minds go to just like the shelter and where are you going to sleep at night, that kind of stuff. But obviously, like you said, feeding the family that night, but also taking care of your pets in the meantime and where they're going to go and how they're going to get food and be taken care of. So that people are going out of their way to make sure that there are donations for those things to be able to feed the volunteers and the animals, and that the animals are taken care of and have a place to be until their owners can come back to take them safely. I think that's really, really awesome that people are doing that. So in the midst of horrible, horrible tragedy and chaos that's happening, there are a lot of people that stand up and try to do the right thing. And there, as I said before, there are countless stories out there of Good Samaritans helping people to escape the fires, people helping other people out by paying for their shelter for that night or whatever. There's so many stories as I was scrolling Reddit and news story articles and stuff. So look for them and you will find them, because there are so many examples.
Yeah, they might not be trending as heavily as the negative one, so you might not necessarily get fed them directly, so you might have to look for them to, but
they're out there.
They are there.
So yeah, again, our hearts go out to anybody that is affected by this, and we hope that everyone is doing okay. So yeah. With that, we will end today's episode. Tune in next Wednesday for our next episode, which is all about belief in the good of people. We're going to be talking about...
That kind of feeds off of what we were just talking about, you know, with the Palisade fires and such, and the response to that.
Just the general idea. It kind of goes with like faith and humanity, of that idea that people are good deep down, and that there are a lot of really, really, really good people out there, and more than the bad, you know? And so looking for that in the midst of when things seem tough or seem like they aren't going well. So that's going to be a really, really, really feel good episode, I think. I'm looking forward to it. Also, if you have any positive stories that you would like to share with us, or a positive news article that you've come across, please send them to us. We would love to share them. You can send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com. You can post them on our subreddit, Uplift Positive Stories, or you can join our private Facebook group and you can post it there as well. So lots and lots of options.
And if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube, or rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us, and please share it around. Like, we'd love to get the positive stories out there, and that'd
be awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week.
And stay positive.